Hi, hello.
Yeah, I can see you. I can hear you. I'm excited to talk with you today. What a beautiful place to be where you are right now.
It is. It definitely is. Yes. So you've been informed where I am.
Well, I know you're not here in the States because look at that sunshine you've got compared. Oh my God, isn't that beautiful? Look at all those windows. I would be going crazy as a daily writer in there. I love that kind of stuff.
It's in a small island called Kalymnos. It's in Greece, just next to the Turkish border.
Wow. Wow. What a gorgeous part of the world. Is that where you find most of your inspiration when it comes to creativity?
Nope. Here I just go for rock climbing, but it's it's a perfect place for writing because there's really nothing happening here. It's just about rock climbing. From time to time, I have journalists calling and I do one or two interviews. But apart from that, I can just focus on writing and climbing.
Being a part of those rocks that you're climbing, I'm really into Mother Earth, the great creator. I mean, you've got to have a conversation with those cliffs before you jump on those things, don't you? Because you have to understand the lay of the land.
Yeah, well, it's always interesting to get to new rock because it is like you have to get to know the rock. You would think that rock is rock, but you move a couple of 100 meters, and there's new kind of rock, and I always have to get to know the rock, to get to feel the rock on my fingertips, and there's a certain just like with stories, there's a certain logic to different kinds of rock, and you need to learn that to get acquainted with the place you're on. And I love that part of rock climbing to sort of get to figure out what it's all about at this new place, and it's different everywhere. And so I'm always a bit scared, kind of. I feel out of my element for a while when getting to know new rock, but it's part of the fascination.
Wow. Well, Native American spirituality says that rocks are the greatest storytellers of all time. And that's why I go and sit beside rocks so many times, because I just want to sit there and listen, because time stands still when you're listening to a rock speak.
Well, it's maybe I wouldn't get too to what's word in English? That's the question. When English is not your first language, you are looking for the how come you don't speak Norwegian? I'll give you a perfect word here, but I wouldn't get too new age about it.
Right.
I guess.
Right.
It's a sufficient word. But there is a sense of stone not caring about who you are and what you are there for. Nature, they don't give a damn, and it's kind of scary compared to climbing indoor, where the route setters have set the route for human beings. Nature, they don't care what you're up to.
Right.
It's just there, and it's kind of brutal and beautiful at the same time. That you are just visiting. It's their rules, not your rules.
Yeah.
And if you die there in the rocks or in the mountains, they don't care about that either. And that is, in a sort of perverted way, that is comforting.
Mm-hmm.
It is like, it makes you feel small and insignificant, but in a good way, because it means that also that your problems, your trouble, your work, your love life, everything, it's insignificant. It doesn't really mean anything. And for a small time, for a small amount of time, you feel part of something bigger, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little new age anyway.
Yeah. Do you feel that way as an author as well? Because I mean, I've got books that have been published as well, and when I go into that moment of knowing that I'm going to bring forward a book, it's creating your own little world, and you almost feel like that nothing else matters but what's going to be landing on that page.
Well, I think that as a reader, I feel I'm a visitor.
Yes.
But as a writer, I'm the host. So I always I always try to explain indirectly to my readers that now you're at my turf. This is my home. I, it's my rules. It's my universe. You can come to visit. I'll serve you my food. I'll play my music. And if you like it here, you're welcome to stay. The door is open. But if you don't like it here, I usually go somewhere else. I'm sure there's another story for you out there just waiting for you. But these are my stories. If you like it here, I'll tell you the story.
How was the Night House first brought into action? Because, I mean, it always reminds me of Paul McCartney with Let It Be, where he started it out with scrambled eggs and then it became Let It Be. Do you find that stories do the same thing? They have to go through an evolution. You get the original idea down and then you go in there and then you craft the story.
Yeah, well, just like with scrambled eggs, McCartney, he had the melody. He didn't have the words yet. I had an idea, and that was two boys making a prank call from a phone booth set somewhere in the 80s or early 90s. And it's the wrong prank call. They are calling the wrong guy or woman. We don't know yet. But the boy making the prank call is then slowly eaten or rather sucked in the receiving end of the telephone, and he totally disappears. It was just that idea, and I realized that, okay, this is kind of funny. So I came up with a title for what was first a short story called "The Meat Eating Telephone," but then I realized that this is a novel, and so it became the novel "The Night House." But it's still the meat eating telephone. There is in the story quite early on in the novel.
Mm-hmm. I got to tell you, I was one of those teenagers. I used to do that at that phone booth, and today I feel guilty as hell about it. But I mean, I was one of those teenagers.
Yeah, you should have been sucked in the receiving end.
Was it done on purpose to release this book during the Halloween season? Because we're in the mood to be spooked. We are in the mood to get so deep into a storyline that we do have those shivers of fear.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that my American publisher, Knopf, it's no coincidence. They published it in Halloween. Here in Norway, it was published in the spring. We don't have Halloween. Well, we sort of started having Halloween. That's the American influence on cultural life all over the world. So actually, my daughter is now celebrating Halloween. But when I grew up, we didn't have that. But I mean, even in a novel, I guess you can clearly feel the American influence. It is influenced by great American horror storytellers like Stephen King,
yeah.
And also recent storytelling like Stranger Things that I just loved. So yeah, it does definitely have that Halloween feeling to it, I guess, which is the kind of horror story where you combine humor and horror.
I love it that you do have that humorous side to it. And I always wonder that when authors do that, they step into that role where there's going to be kind of a chuckle from the reader, that comedians always say it takes years to craft a joke, but yet an author has a way of putting the flow into that moment of connection, and then we just kind of laugh, and it pulls us deeper into the storyline.
It's like a relief from the comedy, I think. It's like, okay, wait a minute, it's not all laughs. There's blood and gore and gruesome stories too. You have to have that in the mix. So but of course the starting point for my stories are always the mystery, um, the and in this case the horror, and
Yeah.
you know, trying to figure out what is really going on here. Um, so it's kind of also a who's done it story.
Do you love it when the mystery is starting with you? Because I mean, or do you lay it out first and then you go in there and you look for the rhyme and the reason and say, oh, this would be a great place to start that, to plant the seeds of the mystery.
Hmm. And also the question, what is real and what is not? This is in that respect, it starts well within the genre of the horror story, but then later on you realize that okay, it's also a sort of a play on the genre itself, and so the book is later on you realize that it's a book about the book about the book.
That's some serious deep talking. Is that when I always ask authors this question? Did you ever have a wine glass moment where you know that you had your story, but after a couple of sips of wine, you take a chance in that story and do something that you wouldn't have done earlier?
Yeah, I think that I'm probably at the point in my writing career now that I really, I mean, I always had fun writing, but it's also experimenting with um, what some writers maybe take a bit too seriously, that they are feel bound by and limited by the genre.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I always feel that genres are there to be used both in a traditional way, but also in an untraditional way.
Mm-hmm.
Rules are there to be broken, but I must say I love the fact that there are genres and that there are rules. For me, that doesn't I don't find that it limits my creativity. Actually, the opposite.
Are you ever challenged by those genres? Because my last book, I wanted it so desperately to be a part of the latter part of the 1960s into the 70s, and it became so tough to do the research right that it was like, okay, I'm going to switch things up and I'm going to make it a modern book about characters from the 60s and 70s.
Can you repeat that question? I'm not sure.
In other words, do genres challenge you in a way of, it's like you put your mindset into this is going to be about this particular period of time, but when you go back to do the research, it becomes so heavy and so distorted. It's like, okay, I love my storyline, but we're not going to be in that genre right now. I need to find a new genre, a new decade.
I don't know. I find that genres in general it inspires me, and if it doesn't fit the facts or the research, I normally skip the research.
Yeah.
What I normally do is any research really. I've stopped doing research and then use all the details of the research. It's more like I have a story and I love the story. I love the twists and the turns of the story, and then I'll do research just to confirm that this is not probably what it would be like, but is it at all plausible?
Yeah.
Is it possible that it could have happened? And when I do my police stories nowadays, I phone my contacts and I send them what I've written, and I say that, do you have any objections? Is this at all possible? Because this is the great story. And sometimes they must tell me that, sorry, you have to change it. But 90% of the time they say that, okay, you can go with this.
Yeah.
And then I'm happy.
I'm so glad you said it that way, because yesterday on my iHeartRadio show, I was talking about how the writing, I can't make it a history book. And I'm so glad that you said it the way that you did, because it backs that up. Don't make your storyline a history book. Tell the story.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I'm writing fiction, and I'll use anything to make the fiction better. And it's just so happens that very often a sense of authenticity is good for the story.
Yeah.
If you have that backdrop, realism works very good in stories. But sometimes you have to realize that it's not about that realism. It's not about the facts. It's about the story that may be about, the human condition. That is the important stuff in your story, not the dates and the persons and the logic of the story. It's there to help the story, not the other way around.
Do you get lost into that story when you're bringing it out in a way that my wife and I have to sit down after I've written for a few hours and get back into a normal lifestyle, and she gives me that room where I have to get back to 2023 and get out of that storyline. Do you go through the same kind of challenges?
Well, I find it quite easy to go out and in of that room, which is your universe, where you have your characters and your and your stories. I'm the kind of person that can write for half an hour on the airport or in a cafe, and I can just switch on and off. I know that some writers, they go to the grocery store and they meet the characters in the grocery store. I don't, and I'm glad I don't.
Are you using a writing instrument, or are you using a computer when you go out into the public to write?
I do, yes, I do. And actually, airports for me, it's actually my favorite place to write. They have a good coffee and people watching. You can find characters there if you want, yeah. Actually, I'm probably the only one in the airport when it comes up on the board that your plane is 1 hour delayed. I go like, yes, that's good news.
With your music background, this is going to be an awkward question, but my last two books, I put music together while writing the book. Do you write music while you're writing your stories? Because there is that vibration about your paragraphs.
No, actually, for me, those are two very different things. I don't know what, but it's I have periods where I write prose, and then when I write music, I'm in a totally different state of mind. It's two very different things for me. I don't know why. That's just the way it is.
I got to ask you this question because my real last name is Bakken. My family is Norwegian. What is it about people with this Norwegian background makes us storytellers that we really feel like we have to make that connection to the imagination and the heart?
I don't know. It's I heard someone saying that it doesn't have to do with the long, dark winters where people are sitting indoor around the table, and there's really nothing much else to do than to tell each other stories. At least I think that in my family, it was always a social reflex when we gathered for winter holidays or summer holidays to tell stories, to retell the old stories. And it's like a social reflex that when you are given a story, you should contribute with a story on your own. Mm-hmm. So for me, my family and all the great storytellers, they were like my writer's school, I think.
Wow. So after all of this is done today, you get to go rock climbing then. I'm so jealous of you because I like being one with the earth like that. I'm just so jealous of you making those rock climbs.
Yeah, it's a great way to have a break from everything in your life. It's the rock makes you forget about anything else but the next move.
I love it. Where can people go to find out more about you, to give you love, and because new readers are found every single day, and I want them to embrace everything that you have shared with the world?
They should go to the local bookstore, support their local bookstore, and buy a book, I think.
I love it. Please come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
You be brilliant today, okay, sir?
I'll do my best. Thank you. Thank you.